Tarox have brought our T6 for Awesome to do some work on, fitting some build stars, some eye backs, some ram air, some bits and pieces, get it ready for Gravity show this weekend. And I thought while I was here in Mark's new amazing facilities that we'd sort of catch up with him with my other hat on, which is the Performance Aftermarket Association hat, and talk about sort of the more general broad terms of the industry and how it is at the moment, and sort of Mark's commitment to the industry by sort of investing so heavily in a new facility. So while those guys are working on the van, we're going to just ask some questions. So as I said in the intro, we wanted to sort of come and really have a look around the facilities, bring our car here. We've always used Awesome for all the work we've done on all the cars, all the Golfs, everything we've ever had has always come here. But before we go into depth about what you've achieved with Awesome, I'm not sure if everybody kind of knows your history in the industry and how you've been on the other side of the fence, you've been on the distribution and manufacturing side of coming into places like Awesome, and that's how you ended up here. Before you worked at Performance Parts Direct, did you always have an interest in cars? Did you always know this was the avenue you would ever end up going down?
Yeah, my first car was a Volkswagen Beetle.
Oh wow, really?
Yeah, so I think I got that at 16, stripped it on my drive, rubbed it down. Wasn't a lot to do on there. A few bolts to take the wings off and the engine out, So did all that myself. And then built it up, and that was my first car. So I went from a Volkswagen Beetle to a V8 Rover SD1.
Really?
So cars has always been a passion. But
and when did you turn it into a job? What age were you?
Well, I mean, I left school and I went to work in a builders merchants, believe it or not.
Right.
Doing a forklift and all that sort of stuff. I enjoyed that, but I knew that I wanted to get into the automotive. And particularly the parts side, really, was what I wanted. So I left there and went to work for a company called Deep Cut Garage, obviously down south. Wasn't really doing what I wanted to do. I was driving, picking parts up and, learning the parts department, but still wasn't enough mainstream for me. So I ended up going for a job at Counsell of Tarox, which is one of the bigger parts distribution aftermarket.
For people that kind of don't know it, it's turned into it got bought and then eventually ended up being Andrew Page, and then it turned into sort of, it's hard to, all those different sort of factors have all amalgamated now, haven't they? But they were the Andrew Page of the South in a way, weren't they? They had pretty much all the South Coast and Surrey all locked in.
So I mean, I went actually for a warehouse job, got refused. One of my friends actually got it, but they wanted me on sales, so would I come back for a sales job? So I did, and that's really where it started. So obviously went into the stores for a couple of weeks to learn the parts side. And then straight into...
How old were you? Have you been at that
I was about 19, I think, 18, 19. Yep. And I wanted to be top sales guy for Counsell Auto Factors for my depot, but ended up in my first month being the top sales guy for the whole of the Counsell Auto Factors group.
Wow. So you went in committed.
I went committed, and then I wanted to be, to get into management.
And you saw that was you at that point, because we've all met the lads that work in that. Some of them just do it because they love cars. Some of them do it just for a job. But you do get the ones that we all know now that have started at that point. They all have if you go there with a desire to work hard, you will move up, won't you? Because
you've got progression, and that's what I wanted. So there were many opportunities within that group to progress. So different depots, across the whole. Sorry.
So within that group. So I'll come back in and say something so we can set off again. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So when you are when you've got a focus and you've got an idea of what you want to do, I think in those kind of situations, it is easy to progress forward, isn't it, if you're committed to it?
Yeah, I think, from my point of view, the management knew that I wanted to go forward. My age at that point was a struggle. because I went for a branch management, at a very young age. And although interviewed well, to give that to me at that point wasn't something that was on the cards for them. So I left.
Yep. Really?
Yeah, I left. Yeah.
Because you just kind of made it clear that you just have to do a few more years.
I needed, for me, that was a point, whereas if there was no progression for me, then it was a stop.
Not interested.
So I left, went to a company called Vulcan Motors. I went to run that. It was obviously a customer of ours. I went to run that, set up a parts department. I ended up running the parts department, running the front desk, service reception, and then running the workshop. And that's where really I got involved deeply into the automotive and workshop
and I suppose
side.
because I didn't know you at that point, didn't realise that when you started here, you had already that skill set. You'd already done some of
I'd already done
branch
garage work. I'd run a garage and all. We had 7 ramps and quite a few technicians and stuff. So we were quite
so a fairly big setup.
Big setup. I had a car sales company as well, which when I left there, I went to do the car sales company on my own.
Right. Wow.
Hey, that didn't work out. I had a car sales and a car valeting company. So I ran them for a year.
You really were sort of like, I suppose now if you were growing up in this modern day, you would have probably had 2 or 3 different Instagram accounts. Should have been like a little sort of people would have said you hustled. You seemed like you wanted to just do as much as you could.
I did, yeah. So I worked out basically that valeting in the winter is not a good place to be. So I left that, sold the businesses, ended up going back to Camberley Auto Factors, and that's when I ended up, as you're probably aware, I was many moons ago was selling Tarox for Performance Parts Direct.
So had Parts Direct, the Performance Parts Direct, was that a new... Did that exist at Camberley when you were there first time?
It did, yeah. I mean, they've been selling it with Coney was the main of their product line. Obviously, as you well know, Tarox was a distributor.
They were the importer of Coney, weren't they? The official importer of Coney suspension.
Yeah, distributor for Tarox, Ram Air,
like brands.
Mega Leads. There was all sorts.
They did a Super Sprint as well. There were bits.
So then they brought in. So was it Super Sprint?
It was Italian.
They tried to bring in another exhaust manufacturer. It's Italian. Monza. Is it Monza?
Answer,
that's it.
I remember.
It didn't really go that well for them.
No. And that's when you went back into Camberley, you went straight into Performance Parts Direct.
When I went back into Camberley, I basically went on to sales for a while, went into management. Then I left and was taken across onto the performance division. Yep. And that's when...
Is that when it kind of, you found that that's when you were in control, because you were an area sales manager, you're in control of your own, sort of, like, basically go out and do the best you can. You're not sort of being watched every day, are you? You can go and speak to people and...
Yeah, it was great. I mean, I love people, so actually going out and being able to speak to people and have your own accounts, etc., and go around the country. Yeah, listen, don't get me wrong. After a few years, it was nice to be around people back at the office, but it's quite hard work to be out on the road, and that's what
Yeah,
but I enjoyed it. It was a great experience.
And being a sales manager for obviously these brands that are still around now and still big brands and brands that you sell now do Awesome. That's how you met Jim, who started Awesome.
Yes, so obviously Awesome was a customer of Performance Parts Direct, selling a bit of Coney. I worked well with Jim to try and get his sales up on the Coney side, and Ram Air and Tarox, etc., etc. And then an opportunity was given to me to come and join the team. So eventually, that's what happened. And
I remember it really clearly. I remember you called our managing director, who you've always had a great relationship with, Renato, and said, "This is the opportunity, this is the plan. I think I can make a difference, and I think we can take it from being a more traditional type setup into a bigger setup." And you had your eyes on the original place, and then we came over to see that original place, and even then it was a big step on from what anybody else was doing at the time when you originally moved into this place.
Yeah, I mean, the building next door was 10,000 square foot. A mezzanine was built in there, taking it to about 13, 14,000 square foot, so it was pretty big.
Yeah.
And of course, a big size workshop, great reception area. I look at that now compared to where we are, and it's I think it's now miles apart. But it was a big step in the industry for me, and I think even back then, Awesome had a building that not many people
had at that time. Absolutely, and even then people were sort of striving to it. As the industry that we're in, the performance automotive aftermarket, the tuning, the styling, you will have seen it. I wouldn't say it's in its infancy, but it's definitely was in its youth in the 90s, and it's finding its feet. And how do you look fondly upon those sort of late 90s, early 2000s tuning, all the car shows, the Max Power, and how do you see it, how you've obviously watched it change?
It's changed a heck of a lot. I mean, I remember being at my first Max Power, and having the brands there, and it was a bit daunting, to be honest with you, but you just don't get shows like that anymore.
No.
I think we've all seen a change in, if you look at Autosport now.
Yep.
I've spent many of my years at Autosport on the Coney stand, with Performance Parts.
Yeah, I think that's probably where I first met you, we've been taken down in the huge Coney stand, and then the separate sections for Tarox and for Ram Air. And it was a huge deal, the Autosport show. It was a very important show to go to, wasn't it?
And I think we've seen that over the years. Just certain people in the industry, have decided not to spend their marketing budget on Autosport, and have found that in other areas. Like now, obviously, if you look at, to be there was what you needed to do. And of course that's.
And if you weren't there, people spoke about you. If you weren't there, people would say they must be going bust. This must be a problem.
The biggest business days for me was a Thursday and Friday. I mean, that was where I would set up all my new dealer contacts, etc. Now, people are spending that money on social media. Everything has changed. I remember setting up the first Facebook here for Awesome many years ago, and now it's a daily thing. We thrive on that. Instagram, Facebook.
Your guys in there are literally communicating with potential customers through any channel that the customer wants to. Email, phone. Are not as busy as they were, are they? We're the same Facebook Messenger, Instagram, DMs. Basically, wherever the customer wants to ask you a question, you've got guys in there ready to get back to them. Tell them the information, send them a link, get them to buy.
And we've obviously got emails, phone calls, so we've got all of that. So it's hard. We've got 4 guys on the sales division now, but obviously we're also supporting our sister company, Performance M, at the moment. So we build the team up there. So, it's not the easiest.
And you've built up a quite a substantial B2B business, being the sole distributor and importer for different brands. So there's not just the sort of, because it's a different kind of business, isn't it? B2B, B2C, in terms of how
massively,
you deal with the customer. A lot of the B2B, they have part numbers, they know what they want. It's kind of supplying them as quick as you can. Whereas the B2C, you're walking them through. They're like, oh, what will a stage 2 give me? Whereas your business customers, I want a stage 2 and I need it now. Whereas your staff have got to have that ability to deal with both, with whoever rings, to put that different hat on and give the service. And it has changed, just tuning in general. I mean, you were kind of with APR and what you were doing, you were at the forefront of what people refer to as chip tuning, but mapping cars properly.
I think APR came on leaps and bounds. It was a lot of work that we put into APR. But the industry again has changed. There was a lot of dictation of what you could sell and what you couldn't sell, especially when it came to software. For me, that market's now changed, and any trade company that we deal with should be allowed to sell what they want to sell, which is right for their business. So we offer 034 Motorsport, Dynamic Plus software. We offer APR, we offer OEM Plus, and we offer Race.
Because in the early 2010s, there became you basically had to choose your team and stick to it, didn't you? And if a customer came in and said, "Oh, I need a map for this guy," you're like, "Well, X company don't offer that, so I'm sorry, I can't service you because the company that, whether it be APR, whether it be Revo, whoever it was, if you had to just commit to that company, didn't you?" And now it seems to have changed in the way.
Yeah, there's some people that still do that. That you can only sell our certain software. You can't sell other people's. But I think we've always wanted to be open. Awesome's always. I've always wanted to be open to sell everybody's software.
Yeah.
It's not the easiest thing to do. You have to have the people that you're working with to really support that as well. And I think the people that we do work with, they do. And they understand that you can't dictate, in the marketplace anymore. So that's a massive change.
The customers come to you with their own research, don't they? And
they
if you're
do.
going to spend the time to convince them otherwise.
The customer is really aware of what they want. They've done their due diligence. They've looked at the hardware. They've looked at the software, and they know what they want.
Yep.
So.
Yeah, I remember you saying when you were starting out with Awesome, you're like, I'm going to offer all the suspension. I want the customer to be able to, if they want Kony, they want Bilstein, they want KW, whatever it is, I'm going to say, if that's what you want for your car, we will get it for you, we will fit it.
As long as it's got quality stamped on it. And that's the most important thing. We dealt with some suspension in the past that, let's just say the warranty and backup and support wasn't there. And that's not fair on the customer.
No.
So,
and it takes time out of your business. If your guys are on the phone to them and you've got an unhappy customer and you can't get back to them, that doesn't help anybody, does it? Mm-hmm. Back to the sort of business side of it, when you were on the road and you were being a sales manager and you're seeing all these different type of businesses that are existing, so many of them, from what I experienced, followed a really similar format. The businesses were based around the one person sort of engineering expertise, like whether that was on Renaults or Citroens or Volkswagens, but it was one guy, his expertise, normally, without sounding stereotypical, is his wife doing the accounts, and then maybe an apprentice or a full-time mechanic. And so many of the tuning companies had that model, and I don't think many of the people that ran them were that interested in the business side of it. Whereas in America, it was becoming more of a big business, not just individual tuning shops. Do you think that when you really started to get your grips to what you wanted Awesome to be with the dawn of e-commerce and you buying more stock and importing, that people found it difficult not to compete with you or to feel that you're a bit ruthless because you came from a business point of view, you wanted it to succeed, and there was so many of the businesses that had previously where their skill set was engineering, and kind of how it was with Jimmy was an engineer and that's what he did, but when you applied your drive and your business knowledge to Awesome, do you think that people then looked upon you as being a bit ruthless and a bit sort of harsh where in another industry it would be total normal practice?
I think there's everybody and every company always has their haters out there, and I say haters, it's there are garages that don't want to do business with us. That's always going to be a part of it because they look at you as a competition and sales, etc. But in actual fact, the amount of businesses that we have helped, we support, we educate, and we work with is countless. We've got Tabby, our technical director, that supports our software side and our hardware side, and the amount of data logging that he works with people and other garages to show, on to support and help, by team viewing, and logging cars with them, etc. It's massive. I think people did think that in the beginning I was ruthless because I did have, a mindset where I wanted to achieve bigger things. And there's been some decisions that I made years ago where I stepped on somebody in the industry, took a brand product that they had at the time, and do I regret that? Yeah, absolutely. There are decisions that I've made that I do regret.
But ultimately, they were made in the.
But I learned by them, and I reflect.
And everyone, and to go through life and say that no one's ever made a decision that was, no one's perfect, and we always said that because you'd committed so heavily into Awesome, you had, unlike many other businesses that were just maybe a father and a son or a bloke and his apprentice, and you had mouths to feed. You've got people's wages to pay. And you've got a big team and you want to look after them and pay them well. And one thing that has definitely people maybe don't know about you is that some of the staff that have been here, I've been here a long time. Some of them since very, very, very early days.
Yeah, we have about 10 people that have been here between 10 and 20 years.
Which, in an industry where it can be a bit of a merry-go-round of staff, is very impressive, isn't it? And it shows how much that you're willing to sort of maybe sacrifice some outward relationships and be a bit more ruthless because you've got these people to look after.
Yeah.
They mean more to you than...
Yeah, and it's not just, it's not just... It's their families as well. We have many events that we go to and the families can actually come with us on the day. So we recently did Tatton Park, and the support from the families of our staff is just amazing. So, they're always in our mind as well.
Absolutely. I mean, without going too deep into it, because it's personal, that there's one of your staff members that isn't very well at the moment, and the way the company is supporting him and keeping him checking in, and he feels that even though he's not here, he's still very much involved, and I know all the suppliers ask after him and everyone.
And yeah, you're referring to Andy Maxwell, and obviously he's he's been in a very bad way. And if he never returns to work, he'll always be a part of Awesome.
Yeah,
he'll always have a place here, and that's been made very clear to him. So,
And I think that's the thing that people don't really always fully understand. The type of business you run internally, as well as how you're perceived externally.
Awesome is all about the staff, and it's certainly not me. It's this business has been built for me to be able to run this business without me being here, and that's I'm always here, so I'm normally one of the first in, and normally like the last out, But
like that said, people like Tabby and John and Mike.
Tabby, John, Mike, Al and Steve and the whole team, and every single person in here is a part of the cog.
Yeah.
And it's that every single person is important. But if I step out of this business, I built it so that I can step out and it will carry on.
Yeah. So in terms of where we are now, and we're talking about previously the industry changing so much, and maybe like shows like Autosport not doing as well, and the industry getting a lot of outward pressure from politicians, police, sort of still carrying around a bit of a bad reputation. With the sheer amount of investment you've done now in Awesome's new building, and then with Performance M to bring it up to a matching level, you obviously believe that the industry has still got plenty of life in it and legs in it, and that there's a way that you can take it forward in a sort of responsible way that encapsulates performance, tuning, but also your level of service and compared to is a dealership and above, isn't it? So
yeah, there's been a lot of talk about electric vehicles, and where the future's going to be, and there'll be a lot of people worried about that. Me, I don't even look at it. I don't even think about it. If I start thinking about what will be in the future, I'm not concentrating on the here and now. So that's the way that, I don't know if that's irresponsible, but I have to deal with day to day. And right now, there's a massive market out there. It's big enough for all of, the tuners that are in the UK.
Yep.
And that's what we obviously predominantly concentrate on. And I think, we're looking for the next product. We're looking to increase our customer service. I'm looking to spend more time with the customer downstairs, which I haven't been able to do for a long period of time. And
so obviously you've got like the lovely show, and you can use this definitely as an event type of place. Now it's got the facilities to just sort of, do anything out of here, have weekends of all kinds of things. But it is definitely, sometimes you can only hear the negative sides of things. But if you were to bring somebody here, so a politician who maybe was bad-mouthing the performance automotive industry, you would bring them here and say, no, this is how we believe it should be done.
Yeah, absolutely.
We're not cutting out cats. We're not creating pops. This is getting a car and upgrading its performance.
I think you were about to say we're not creating pops and bangs. Is that what you were saying?
Yeah, it was, yeah.
There's a few times we have to create pops and bangs.
Yeah, exactly. But you're not going out there purposely to...
No, we don't.
make cars loud just for the sake of being loud.
There's a lot of things that people do in the industry that they shouldn't. So,
Yep.
We as Awesome do not associate with that.
And like you said, going back to the suspension, one thing that you can get, you can choose a Miltech, a Scorpion, a Remus, whatever your brand is, you're grading quality.
Yeah.
You can choose whichever one you want, but you're not coming in with something you've bought off eBay. We're not cutting an exhaust and welding it back up for you.
Absolutely not.
You're relying on the manufacturers to make legal systems and to make the quality systems, and then you fit them here. And there's, from what I can see, is the suspension companies, the brake companies, the exhaust companies, the mappers, we're all trying to do things as best we can and to improve the car's performance, so it's safer, it's more enjoyable, and there shouldn't be really a problem with that, should there, if it's done properly?
Yeah, I mean, doing the job properly is what it's all about, and I believe that most of the garages are doing that. You know, there's a few that cutting exhausts up and taking things out of the exhaust that they shouldn't do. And I think you're always going to have garages, but on the whole, I think the industry do the right thing.
That's what I mean. When you say you've got someone comes in with an RS3, it's a couple of years old, things are starting to get a bit tired, and maybe not perform. The brakes aren't working as well, so it's a little bit unsafe that way. The suspension's not working as well, it's a little bit unsafe that way. When it leaves here, it may have a performance exhaust on it, and it may sound a bit better, but a lot of the time they're going out safer cars, aren't they? Because they've been checked, the geo's been done, it's got TUV suspension, it's got ECR90 exhaust, it's literally...
We've upgraded the brakes to perform better.
Yeah, exactly.
What?
And I just don't think...
I always struggle with that, and people say, oh, you're tampering with cars, when in actual fact, that stopping power for that customer is far much better on it.
Exactly, and I think people do always, when they're looking at our industry, focus on the small amount of negatives, and they turn a blind eye to the fact you've just put much better tyres, much better brakes, much better suspension. A lot of the times, I mean, I'm no expert on engine tuning, but as far as I can see from other companies that I've spoken to, is that with a good intake system and a good map, it will be a cleaner delivery of fuel that goes out there. It'll be a better emission.
Yeah, and obviously better economy as well.
Yeah.
Well, all depends on your right foot.
Of course.
And if you're, obviously at a drag
But again,
strip
people aren't
track.
focusing on this type of thing, are they?
No,
and I think
they don't. They always look at the negative.
There's definitely a facility like this has the potential to educate people, especially with the beautiful view that you've got over the dyno room and all the workshop is, that say, look, these cars are going out better than what they came in. They're going out better and safer.
Yeah.
So it's, probably a light should be shone more on this place to sort of educate further the people that aren't that aware of what happens in places like this.
Question from me to you: how do you see the tuning industry?
Yeah, a bit like you in terms of you can't focus too much on what's happening with the future models of cars. I think there seems to be a switch around back into hybrid, which is good for everybody. That helps.
But do you see? How do I put it? How many years do you see? Do you put a timeline on this tuning industry or not?
One of the reasons I got involved with the Performance Automotive Aftermarket Association is because I want a lot of the people that had set it up and that were involved with it. They were the generation above me, and I wanted my generation, for it to keep on going. Like if you think of someone like Regal Autosport, started by Chris. Now it's Ash and Ryan that are more involved with it, and we want that they're closer to my age, and I want it to be able to go through another generation.
So you're saying I'm not close to your age?
I think you slip lovely in between.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think I do see legs in it, but I think only legs if we ensure that we're not low-hanging fruit for governments. When we start doing things properly, and we just make sure that there's some education and that we use the right quality parts fitted properly.
Do you see approval coming in?
I don't think the UK has the money to make their own approval at the moment. They would have to improve all the MOT stations. They would have to vastly improve the whole infrastructure of how cars are tested in this country.
So we've got years then, haven't we?
I think we've got years. I think
There's the answer.
Yeah, exactly. There is no, since we left Europe, there's no, we're still just borrowing little bits of accreditation from them. So until we set up our own full approval system, then at the moment it's a bit more like America, where in certain states you just do what you want as long as it passes an MOT, which everyone knows isn't.
So let's tune cars and let's sell products.
Let's tune cars, exactly. Let's carry on tuning cars. Well, Mark, thanks for your time. I know it's a super busy, always busy here. It's never not busy, is it? So to grab some time, and also I think for people to maybe understand a little bit more about your heritage, that, like I said, you built a Beetle on your drive, that you didn't just sort of magically appear at Awesome and start taking over the tuning industry, that you built up like most people did, but with a slightly different view on the industry than other people.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
No problem.
Thanks for your time.
Cheers.